So, I mean, we got to start with where things finish. The word devastation would be an understatement, I think, to
Oh,
describe, your reaction upon walking out. But I'm so intrigued because you even sort of surprisingly brought yourself to tears, as all the havoc is going on around you. So, like, was it a blindside? Were those tears with the feeling of finality for you? How did you feel once everything settled in that you were getting voted out?
oh man. Okay, so when I was going on my monologue about how much it's gonna mean to be in the jury, I genuinely was crying for myself and also someone else because even though I was at odds with Gabe, it still would suck to. I lived with this man for 13 days prior to this, so like still seeing him leave would suck. Even though we're adversaries in the game, it's just still like, man, this person deserved to be here. I know how hard they played. And so it was kind of like I was terrified for myself and at the same time terrified for them because this is the reality. We are so close and it's gonna sting even worse because we're so close, you know?
Okay, so yeah, you were truly surprised then by the fact that you were voted out.
Oh, 1,000%. Once I saw my name written down the second time, I knew I was done. I knew that that was it. I knew that something happened that I wasn't aware of. And it turns out I didn't know how close Sue and Gabe were the entire time, that he had his two little birds that were basically keeping their eye on me the entire time. And so I did not know that. I thought that we were real ride or dies in that situation, but clearly not. Clearly
Yeah.
not.
Well, yeah, so talk to me a bit about that because we saw you go to Caroline a lot with the plan. So your assumption was that it was just going to be like an open and shut unanimous vote against Gabe because also obviously I'm sure you've been mulling over for the past several months. The shot in the dark is always something kind of living in the back of your head as well.
Totally. So, in my personal opinion, my perspective of it was that all I needed was Kyle and Caroline to vote with me because actually, leading up to that episode, Rachel actually told me that she had the advantage. So I knew she was gonna leave. I knew she was gonna leave in the episode. And so
Oh,
but that didn't come into play because she told me right when we were about to leave to tribal council, she told me I have an advantage. Someone gave it to me. And I had no time before we went to tribal council to tell anyone else that information. And so sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, man, I wish I would have just sprinted to Kyle and Caroline and told them, hey, she just told me she's leaving. If we just vote together, Gabe is gone, you know? And so I have that regret in the back of my head, but at the same time, I couldn't have possibly known that Caroline and Sue were kind of like the little injured birds for Gabe the entire time. So
yeah. So, how important was that advantage? I mean, was it going to be? Because it seemed like throughout the afternoon you were trying to really float this Gabe idea out there, but it seemed like from our perspective, you'd sort of just settled into being a Rachel vote. Would that have been the case if she had no advantage? It would have just been 5-1 on Rachel.
yep, definitely. Because if I couldn't convince Caroline, there would have been no reason to put names on Gabe at all. It might as well have been a unanimous 5v1. But as I said in that episode, genuinely, it would not make sense to come back with five. Like I was not, we were gonna be at odds. The six was gonna pick off the five of our Tuku tribe, and so I'm like, we literally just lied to them all and said that there was cracks, but clearly there's no cracks. Rachel couldn't find a crack. There's no cracks, so now we're all just getting picked off one by one. So I genuinely still think to this day that it was the right choice to vote off Gabe, but it was me instead. So there's that.
Well, let's go back to despite maybe Tuku being a bit of a united front, where the first crack begins to form. We need to talk about the first and only vote you went to in the pre-merge here, because again, it had been built up to us that it was you, TK, and Kyle, but then you had this adverse reaction to TK's reaction to your reaction to the loss, and so you ended up flipping. From what TK told me, it seemed like from his perspective, it was a bit more of like you, then Kyle, then TK, with Kyle sort of being that intermediary. So talk to me more about your perspective on that vote and what makes you ultimately, I guess from our perspective, I'll use the term flip, but I don't even know if you would use that term.
Definitely. No, the TK vote out was actually one that I thought about a lot after the game even ended. It was one that
Well,
I
I'm sure you had some interesting conversations with him at
Oh,
Ponderosa.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, he was pissed at me for sure, as he should be. Like completely, completely valid. when I reviewed it in my head, though, it was that a competitor bumped head was another competitor. Because being called a loser or like being called like, oh, they don't care enough about losing as a Division 1 athlete, I'm like I took it so to heart. And I was like, how the hell are you gonna tell me that I don't care about losing? Like I care about losing way more than you care about losing. So it was like it was kind of like this bump of egos a little bit. And I completely agree. It was TK, me, and then Kyle was kind of the bridge because they kind of had that bro out moment. Like me and TK never really had that time to really talk. And we say it to this day, we're like, if we could have just sat down and talked and like got to know each other just one on one more, it probably would have been better. However, I also was not willing to go to rocks. Like it was regardless of it was like the options were TK goes home or we go to rocks. Like there wasn't really anything that I could do with like separating the three at that point. And so I think that for me, the TK vote out was almost like Gabe didn't even have to play the game after that because he had his two injured birds corralled and they did anything that he wanted to do. So yeah, the TK vote out was I shot myself in the foot there, but at the same time, I'm like, how could I have saved him if it came down to rocks? Because I wouldn't want to go home on a rock on the second tribal council. Are you crazy? No way.
So right after that is really when the you versus Gabe, our secular targeting ends up beginning here. So we, from our perspective, again, we get that Gabe tells Kyle that he's coming after you, which then he communicates to you, which really seemingly starts you down the path. Was that the case, or were you and Gabe just not vibing from even before that instance?
I would say both. I think that we were not vibing from that instance. And then also on top of that, like Kyle came back to me and was like, Gabe is throwing your name out there. And so immediately I'm like, okay, so we weren't vibing from the jump. And then also you're throwing my name out there. And that's also why at the social hour, I needed to make that move and be distinctive and be like, I do not trust Gabe. Please use me as a number and distinct myself from the Tuku tribe. And so a lot of people were like, oh, like that was too big of a move too soon. I'm like, honestly, I should have doubled down on it even more. And then I was also mad at myself because I was gaslit by Sue and Caroline when we got back to apologize to him. And I did not think I needed to apologize to him because I'm like, you threw my name out first. So why am I apologizing when you threw out my name to Kyle in the first place? And that's why I came at you so hard. And so it in my head, when I threw out his name, it did two things that benefited me. One, no matter what, everyone that was at that hot dog social was gonna remember that there are cracks. Tiyana literally threw Gabe under the bus. Like she is out of there, like wants to leave. And two, it also put a target on Gabe's back. So at the same time, I'm separating myself and being like, here's an offering. I'm a number. Let me know if you want to use me.
Yeah, so the person that ends up throwing you under the bus to him is someone like Soon. It's so interesting in the preseason, right? We're all like, here's a flight attendant who wants to be a pilot. Here's someone who owns a flight school. And the relationship was complicated to say the least, including when you see all this red paint at the merge and you start putting two and two together. We see Caroline approach Sue and basically be like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I know what happened. Did you ever have that same conversation, or did you have any intention of outing that information at any point in the game?
No, so once I figured that out, that I was like, oh my gosh, who was the only one person that we actually saw with red paint all over themselves? It was Sue. And then also I knew from that paint episode when I walked away with Caroline and I was like, kind of started to scare me a little bit. It's because up until that point, Sue was crying almost like every single day leading up to it. So that's also why we didn't press her on it because we were like, okay, you're kind of becoming a little unhinged and like that's why you're scaring me. Once we got into the merge and I finally realized I was like, oh my God, Sue has something. I was loyal to Sue because I thought that that was going to be on our alliance, like the girls vibe, like the girls alliance. I had no idea how close Sue and Gabe were, and I didn't know that Sue just kept chirping back to Gabe, no, like everything that I said. And so I had no intention of throwing Sue's name under the bus at all. But I think that she thought because I threw Gabe's name under the bus that I would do the same to her. But that wasn't the case. It was because me and Gabe were adversaries and I thought that we were good. So I was
Hmm.
never going to throw her name under the bus.
Well,
But
yeah,
I
you.
should have.
Well, you speak about that, or under the plane, if you will. Well, we speak about this women's alliance. I'm intrigued. Let's say that you had gotten what you wanted. Gabe ends up going here. We saw the early seedlings, perhaps, of like a cross-tribal women's alliance happening before this split ends up occurring. If you were to move into the jury phase, would that have been the group you would have moved forward with? You even said at the beginning of the episode you were weighing about whether to go with Tuku or whether to go with the women. Where was your head at should you have survived that vote?
Should I have survived that vote? I was absolutely going with the women. There was no question. I feel like I had great vibes from Teeny, great vibes from Rachel. Obviously, I wanted to save her, and then I ended up going home myself, so that was fun. I had great vibes from Genevieve. I knew that they were all intelligent, they were strong, they were charismatic, they could talk to a bunch of people, and so I knew that if we just planted our seeds in different places, we would have multiple ways to get to the end if we all just worked together. But I definitely would have been done with Sue and honestly done with Tuku at that point because I would have known that they were backstabbing me at that point. Like I would have known that I was like, okay, well, this is no longer the vibe. I'm gonna go ahead and see myself out. But I definitely would have gone with more of the cross-tribe alliances rather than just staying Tuku strong and versus Gata and Lavo. I would have wanted to work with people that I actually felt aligned with.
Obviously, the emotion was clear as the night sky on your face with everything that was happening, and that reality sort of came crashing down. What was that process like for you to sort of like work through it, both, in the moment as everyone celebrates making the jury and in those days afterwards, when you're not having a sit down with TK and you're probably parsing through the fact that this thing that you so desperately wanted, you were just within arm's reach of getting.
Thanks so much for bringing that up. Thank
Of
you.
course, anytime,
Yeah, of
anytime. You know
course.
what? Hey,
Oh, yeah.
if the episode didn't do it last night, I'm happy to reopen that wound.
Yeah, go ahead and twist the knife, why don't you?
Exactly.
No, genuinely, it was like the worst thing ever. I think that once I saw my name written down the second time, I completely blacked out because I knew
Mhm.
it was done. I knew it was because I thought that Sue, Caroline, and Kyle had my back. More so Caroline and Kyle. And so once I saw it a second time, I'm like, what in the hell? Like, there's no way that this is happening to me. And so at that, like, it was really just raw emotion. And I knew that I was going back to TK and I had to explain myself as well. And really just being so close
Yeah.
actually like makes me viscerally want to throw up. Like being that close to the finish line and tripping and not almost like it was also really sad because when I thought about it, it was almost like I was a little kid at recess and I was waiting for someone to play with me. And I'm like, hey, here's a great idea. Let's go ahead and do a big move or let's do an intelligent big move. And no one wanted to play with me in the sandbox and build sandcastles. Like, that's what it felt like because I'm like, damn, Kyle voted my name down too. Like, someone who I thought was going to be my ride or die and someone that I would have never voted their name down, put my name down. And then also that same episode, Caroline actually like cried to me and was like, you would never put my name down, Tiyana. You would never put my name down. Like it means so much to me. And I was like, no, I got you. And so that felt below the belt as well because I'm like,
Mm.
why are you crying to me if I'm the scapegoat? Like cry to your alliance members. Like what? And then also with Sue too, it was almost like below the belt as well because what wasn't shown was Sue was crying almost every single day when we were in the Tuku tribe. And I was the one that was constantly being like, Sue, we got this. Like, I'm there for you. I also miss my family. And I don't know if that was gameplay or if that was something else. And then also Sue was like before the TK vote out, I think this is also something that was like really big with the TK vote out is Sue kind of like attacked TK's character and not him as a threat in the game. And
Mm.
so I was more inclined to believe her because I'm like, man, this goes outside the game. And me being a girl's girl, I'm like, man, I want you to feel good. Like I want you to feel confident. I don't want you to feel like you're not being heard. Turns out it was all a lie. And so that's something that I legitimately do want to sit down with Sue later on in life and like break it down. But she genuinely did not, she came for his character and not him as a threat in the game. And so therefore I was like, man, I'm gonna trust her because she's confiding in me with all this information and like being very vulnerable. And that's also a big reason why TK had to go as well for just overall morale. But turns out none of that was happening. So when she said that she was going to outrightly tell me anything to get me to vote TK, to Gabe and Caroline, she was right. She did anything that she possibly could to get TK out.
Last thing I want to ask, perhaps on a brighter note, is we talked about this, right? You are the first native Hawaiian resident to play on Survivor. And you talked last night about like, oh my God, my family's gonna, razz me so hard for watching me cry. But talk to me about the response from your family, from your community to, getting to make a name for your particular background on this show on a very different type of island.
It's been absolutely unreal. I think what's so amazing about the Hawaiian community in general and just people in Hawaii, like we rally behind anyone that's like representing Hawaii in different places, different spaces. It's so incredible to be able to see my family like also just get so invested in this game that I love. Like it's so cool to have them be like, "Ooh, strategy wise, like maybe I could have like aligned with Genevieve." Like they're just throwing out different names as to like if they were to make the merge how they would have played the game. And so it's so fun to like play these hypotheticals because actually knowing these people, it's so funny to see that my family is so invested in their lives, even though they've never met. So I think that it's been incredible. Like I would never change anything for the world. And I think that I learned a lot about myself in the process for sure.
Well, we were so happy to learn about you. I relish every one of these 3 times that we've gotten the chance to chat. You just are such a positive light, and you wear your heart on your sleeve in so many ways, which is so incredibly admirable, even in those down moments like we saw last night. But it was a big up moment for me to get the chance to talk with you this morning and talk it all through. Tiyana, thank you so much for providing so much context and so much perspective and so much heart, as per usual.
No, thank you so much. It honestly, seeing your face on my screen at 4:49 in the morning is the best type of coffee. I don't even need coffee. I just need your face.
All right. Well, I don't know if we can bottle that up, but I'll talk to my people about it. Tiana, thank you again so much. So great talking with you. All the best to you and yours. And I cannot wait to see what happens next with you, my friend. Thank you again.
No, thank you.
Have a good one. Bye, Tiana.
Bye.